Hey everyone, welcome to A Mess Nonetheless. I am Rachel.
And I'm Melissa, and we are sisters. And we are so glad you guys are joining us again today.
Yeah, 4 days. It's going to be 4 days in a row.
4 days in
we
a
were
row.
kind of polling people who listen regularly, asking, how do you think we should do a series where we want to talk about 4 topics on the same thing, 4 parts of the same thing? Because we didn't want to like spread it out over a month and like lose people. And our friend was like, well, if you're talking about a miniseries, I mean, that needs to be bingeable.
One
He's
after
like,
the other.
I view miniseries as something I can just, keep going. So if you space them out, So here we are, 4 days in a row.
Again.
So yesterday we talked about when you don't deal with conflict. And today we're actually talking about when you are the conflict maker. Like you're,
Oof.
I know what we're going to say.
I said oof.
Oof. Yeah. So this is when you maybe are creating too much conflict, like kind of polar opposite of what we talked about yesterday, but that's because we have different people in our audiences. And Melissa shared yesterday that she has been the person who just tried to keep pretend peace just to make everyone happy. And I have been the conflict maker where I just kind of made a mess all the time, but I wasn't seeking like true healing and resolution. I was just the problem. And, I've shared a lot. If you've listened to all of our episodes, you've heard me talk about being just a difficult person and making people's lives difficult for who knows what reason. Why that would ever
be your goal.
My goal. Oh my gosh. It just was so natural. It wasn't a goal. It just happened. But
I just did it without even trying.
I did. Yeah. And so
I don't know which is worse.
I know. So maybe you are this person like me who just kind of went around making conflict everywhere. Our younger brother always says you're just running around, not me, but he says it of one of his kids. And I agree about one of my kids. He just runs around starting fires.
Yeah.
And then runs away.
Yeah.
You start a little fire, but you don't stay. You don't help put it out. And you're not even like enjoying it. You're just starting it and leaving.
Yeah. You don't even watch it grow. You're just gone.
Exactly. And that's what we're calling a conflict maker today. Maybe that's not the best word.
Fire starter.
Fire starter. When you're the fire starter, that's probably what we should have titled it. I could change the graphic.
Well, you could.
When you're the fire starter.
Yes. We might need to do that.
Running around and starting a bunch of fires and not dealing with the aftermath is so stupid. And so
it's chaotic and exhausting.
Chaotic and cowardice and prideful. There's so many things about it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything
do you want to give some examples of those fire starting days of yours? Like what that looked like?
Yeah. So I think for me, my fire starting days.
She's in fire starter recovery.
I'm no longer a pyro. Is that what they call it? A pyromaniac or whatever. Yeah. She's in recovery. I think for me, I just had conflict all of the time. And I was angry a lot. And because I wasn't dealing with anything healthy in a healthy manner, I wasn't shoving it down like a lot of people do.
Right.
I was letting everything boil over.
Yep.
And so, the verse in Ephesians that says, in your anger, do not sin. I was doing that all of the time.
You did not listen to that verse.
I did not listen to that verse. I just didn't read that one that time.
Yes. Skipped over it.
And, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. It's like, I was just living kind of in a prideful, self-righteous, judgmental, and angry state. So what a treat for all around me.
Yes.
And because I believed I was right all the time, I just started fires because I was like, well, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like
bomb drop. Yeah.
Bomb drop. Yeah. I'm like, what am I doing here with my hands?
She's throwing her hands around. She doesn't know.
I know. I'm just dropping little bits of fire or whatever. But I know for me, what I did not do, there's another verse in James that says, like, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And then another verse in Proverbs, a hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. So I was pretty much the walking opposite of the Bible.
You were Proverbs 33 because that was like the one that got removed.
32.
32.
It ends with
Proverbs 31. That's 32. What I meant. Yep. You were the edited version.
Deleted scenes.
Yep.
And so these verses, like, if you're listening to these verses, like, in your anger, do not sin, and you're like, oh, snap, I sin all the time in my anger, or
Mhm.
everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And you're like, nope, that's not me.
Mhm.
You are in the same category as I spent so much of my adult years.
Mhm.
And you are the fire starter. You
Yep.
are the conflict maker. And
And
now
it's good
maybe
to
you're
just
like,
take it, to own it, to like recognize it and be like, oh, that is me.
that is me. And what do we always say? What are you going to do about it? Ask God. I
Mhm.
don't want to be this way
Mhm.
anymore. But the thing is maybe you're like, well, I sin in my anger all the time, but I don't engage in conflict.
Mhm.
You might not think you're engaging in conflict, but doesn't mean you're not starting fires.
Well, it doesn't mean that you're not, because so you might not be engaging, but you're creating it
Mhm.
wherever you go, which
Yeah.
is so exhausting for the people around you, because now it's up to them
Mhm.
to have to deal with you
And put out the fire.
and to be like, hey, wait, come back here. Can we talk about what you just did? And a lot of times you don't want to. And so now it leaves people in a precarious place.
Yes, for sure.
Mhm.
So yeah, fire starter is not a great place to be. If you feel
Mhm.
convicted in any way listening to this, that is you,
Mhm.
it will change your life and everyone's life around you if you get this issue at the feet of Jesus and under
Mhm.
control.
Exactly.
All of
And it
your
can be done,
relationships.
because Rachel does
Absolutely.
not create fires anymore. Like, she just really doesn't. And it is
Thank you.
been a life-changing experience for me as her sister and her best friend. Like, that I like her a lot more.
Yeah, we are only still best friends because I got this issue
It's
under
true.
control.
This is true. We would
Yeah.
we would have been done. Just boundary's sake, I would have had to keep her at arm's length. And
Yeah.
we got to that place for a while. And thankfully, Rachel took it to God and just started being transformed from the inside out, and has become just the most beautiful version of herself. And so if you're hearing this and you feel there's just no hope, I can never overcome this because I feel so angry all the time, or I feel so frustrated all the time, or I think I'm right all the time, or I don't know how to get my feelings under control. You can. And that is what Jesus offers us, that freedom.
Absolutely. And I am no longer constipated
No,
spiritually.
it is not.
The
She
laxatives have
poops
done their
good and
job.
she doesn't start fires.
That's right.
Life
If
is
you're
good.
if you're only jumping into part 2 today, please go back and listen to part 1. If you're like, what in the heck are they talking about?
Yep.
There was some poop analogies yesterday.
Mhm.
So
It made sense.
and so another thing is like, maybe you're like, well, I'm not the fire starter, but I'm married to the fire starter, or
Mhm.
my best friend is the fire starter, or
Or your
whatnot.
sister is.
Or your sister is. Yeah. So if you heard Melissa say boundaries, we've talked about boundaries, that she had to put up boundaries with me.
Mhm.
I have had to put up boundaries with people in my life that are fire
Mhm.
starters.
Yep.
But another thing my husband says this all the time to our children is, it's from Proverbs. I actually don't know which verse it is or which chapter, but it's in there, is it doesn't pay to argue with a fool. Like,
Right.
don't
Mhm.
argue with a fool. And
Yep.
so if a fire starter is a fool, like
Mhm.
just are, they
Yep.
believe the best in themselves. They believe that they have it right. They believe that
Mhm.
they're doing something that's not, not a problem or whatnot. And there really is no arguing with a fool.
Mhm.
And my husband uses it to remind our children not to argue with each other when they're acting
Yep.
like fools.
When they're
It's like,
fools. Yep.
you can't go anywhere with a fool. Like, you're just never going to land in a great place. And so if you're like, well, I'm in a relationship with a fire starter, get that verse, remember it, and remind yourself, there's no point in arguing with a fool
Mhm.
until they get it in their head that they don't want to be this way anymore. They're just going to keep being this way. And
Mhm.
obviously there's going to be times that you end up in, an argument with them or conflict. But
Right.
I said this in a different episode. I said, sometimes when someone is wrong and you're like, they just want to be right, you're just like, okay. And you don't
Yeah.
argue. You
Yeah.
shut down the argument. You don't
Yep.
engage them. You don't engage their pride. And not to be like passive aggressive, though maybe that is exactly what it is. But in my mind, this is a boundary, and
Mhm.
it's taking back some of the control or the power. Not that it's a power struggle, but a fire starter, they want all the power, or they
Right.
have all the power.
So you kind of are in a power struggle. Even if you don't care to have the power, you can't give
Exactly.
all the power over to them.
Yes,
Mhm.
you don't want them to have all the power, even if you're like,
Mhm.
I could care less about me having the power, but
Right.
you're feeding into, unfortunately, something with them. And so sometimes it is just shutting down, like, okay, you feel that way.
Mhm.
There's nothing I can
Mhm.
say to change your mind. Um, or, like, let's say the fire starter says hurtful things,
Mhm.
just kind of drops like stupid, hurtful things that
Mhm.
it's like, they know it's not going to feel good to you, but they just say it, and they say it in a teasing way, and they say it in a way
Mhm.
that they feel like it's okay. And you can just say, well, that's not true.
Yeah.
Or that hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Little quips, like little, you're not digging at them. You're just stating truth. That, I don't care for that. In fact, just yesterday, my daughter's best friend, so she's 11, was sad because her younger sister called her a fat pig, and then got all the other little children, like 7-year-olds, to agree that she was a fat pig.
Oh, my word.
And I looked at her and I said, "Are you a fat pig?" And she goes, "No." And I said, "Then you know what? The best thing to do in that situation is speak the truth and let it lie." And I said, "Look at them and say, well, I know that's not true. So how weird that you would think so." And
Right.
walk away. Put them in their place a little bit. Like, it's not true. So I'm not going to let you say that. And there's a lot of authority that can be spoken in truth. And just
for sure.
little bits of truth. That's not true. Don't say that about me. That's hurtful.
And there's really, when you're not really engaging, because you're just kind of giving like you said, just laying it out there and kind of walking away. To someone who's a bully, and fire starters can really be perceived as bullies a lot of the time.
There's a lot of bully-like tendencies.
Not engaging with the bully is the best way often to get at them. And my oldest son is really good at that. He really doesn't really care what people say about him. He doesn't care. He knows what's true and what's not true. And he didn't go to public school until he was in the middle of his 6th grade year, which could be a really hard time. And there was several situations where kids would be quote unquote bullying him, and he'd be like, "Well, that's not true." Literally would be like, "That's not true," and walk away. Like,
I love him.
Okay. And then that was it. Like, or he would be, there was one time he was going to be threatened by someone. I know somebody was talking about bringing a weapon to school, and he's like, "Well, I'm telling on you." And they're like, "Well, then I'm going to hurt you." And he's like, "Well, I'm going to tell on you first." And like,
he's just like, so much logic.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid. And he does. He's really just never had bullies in his life because he just shuts them down with logical statements.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So maybe you're the fire starter. Maybe you're in a relationship with one. It's challenging to be a fire starter because a lot of work needs to be done to not be that person. And it's challenging to be in a relationship with one because a lot of work needs to be done to continue to have a relationship with that person. What were we going to say?
Well, I was going to say, and when you're in the one in the relationship with the fire starter, you don't really get to have a say over their growth and their healing. Like, you can pray for them, you can love them, but it's not really something you can fix, and that can be really exhausting. And
exactly. And maybe some boundaries will need to be put up then.
A lot of boundaries need to be put
a lot. So we're going to wrap this up. Last verse I just want to say is in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." God's desire is for us to be peacemakers, not pretend peacemakers, real peacemakers, not fire starters. Slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. If we're spending a lot of our time starting fires, the fastest way to undo that, I would say, is to begin to be a listener, because then you're not just thinking about your own thoughts and your own rage and your own. So challenge. Do you have one?
I mean, I guess if you are, if you listen to some of these examples and you're like, "Oh my word, I am a fire starter," and that bothers you, that's good that it bothers you, because that's the first step in healing anything that is ugly in our life. Get on your knees right now and start talking to God about it and ask him, be like, "I do not want to be this person. I don't want to hurt people in my life like this." And just have that be a daily prayer. It's probably going to be something you have to talk to God about on the regular throughout the day for a long time. Like, it's not going to be a one and done thing, most likely. And if you are the one who is in a relationship with a fire starter, they most likely are hurting you. You most likely are feeling some grudge and things like that towards them. And so if they are someone who's really close to you, if there's someone who is really important to keep in your life, like a sister or a spouse or a child, I would encourage you to have a conversation with them. Maybe ask them if they'd be willing to listen to this podcast and say, "I love you so much. I want our relationship to be healthy, but until I'm realizing that you drop these fires and these bombs on me all the time and it hurts me. And so I'm going to have to back up a little bit. I don't know what that looks like. You're going to have to pray about that." But I would start by being honest, because if they love you, like, if I would have had this advice years ago and I had gone to Rachel, I believe that she would have been mad at me, but she also would have loved me enough she would have thought about it. Like, after we parted ways, it would have stayed in her mind. And I think she maybe would have been willing to listen to something. And, cause she loves me. She didn't want to be hurting me. And
Well, and as
And
soon as
so
I recognized the depth that I was hurting you, I was so
Yeah.
grieved. Like I
You
just
so
wanted,
grieved.
I was on my knees. I was on my
Mhm.
knees
Mhm.
and I had a lot of work to do in my own heart, but
Mhm.
then to reconcile, heal the
Yep.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and just be praying for your fire starter, the person in your life that you love so much. Just pray regularly all day long, kind of for them.
All right. Well, we will see you guys tomorrow. And
Yep.
as always, please feel free to reach out to us through our Instagram, Facebook,
Yep.
email, a mess nonetheless
Yep.
at gmail.com
Yep.
or our website.
Yes.
Okay. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. Bye.